I'd like to call the special meeting to order to discuss the city's 2016 budget. This meeting is presided over by the Honorable Mayor Robert Odekirk. Krista, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Odekirk?
Here.
Councilman Gavin? Absent. Councilman Girl?
Here.
Councilman Hug?
Here.
Councilman McFarland?
Here.
Councilman Morris?
Here.
Councilman Mudrin? Here. Councilwoman Coleman?
Here.
Councilman Turk?
Here.
Krista, Councilwoman Gavin contacted me last week, said she was going to be out of town for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Next, are there any citizens to be heard on the agenda item this evening? Now would be the time to come. Podium. Seeing none.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. This evening, I present to you the proposed 2016 fiscal year budget. I want to start off by pointing out to you that the budget document itself, which you have distributed and will be posted on our website tomorrow morning, first couple of pages contains the overview of all the funds. We've got So you've got the first couple of pages, pages 6 and page 7, give you all the revenues and expenditures, transfers in, transfers out, and an overview of all of the funds. So first I want to focus on the operating funds. As you can see, the general fund supports the general activities, including police and fire, economic development, code enforcement, garbage collection, and so forth. We've got our water and sewer fund, which is referred to as an enterprise fund or a profit loss fund, which is independent of the general fund. And that's strictly for the operations of the water and sewer system. We've got 3 wastewater treatment plants, 450 miles of sanitary sewer, 26 wells, 11 water treatment plants, and 38 lift stations. And then another enterprise fund we have is the parking fund. This has 2 parking decks, 7 parking lots, 700 on-street meters, and it also includes the Joliet Union Station. The summary of the operating budget this year is a general fund increase of $1.6 million, just under 1%. Water and sewer fund, a decrease of $1 million, or almost 2.5%. And then the parking fund down just a little bit there, about 5.6%. Focusing again on the general fund, highlights, we have almost $169 million in estimated revenue, which is an increase of $5.03 million over last year's budget. This budget includes a 4.99 increase proposed in the property tax levy, which will raise $1.625 million. The library is proposing a 2% tax increase. There's a 3.5% increase in our garbage fees, about $494,000, and this was anticipated in an existing contract that we have with Waste Management, and an increase in the real estate transfer tax from $3 to $5 per thousand.
Jim,
Yes.
do you have your slideshow printed out? It's not in this, unless I'm missing it in this binder to follow
No, it's not in
along?
the binder. I don't. Is it showing up on your screen there?
Yeah.
It is, but I like to take notes on some of the comments you're making on here. So if maybe you can email the council your
Sure.
presentation?
I can do that.
Thank you.
This budget includes a position of Deputy City Manager, Economic Development Director. This position would be funded by a decrease in contribution to the Will County CED and use of some of the funds from the downtown special service area. I'm also recommending what is now a part-time position at the front desk to become full-time. And the other mention of $30,000 in equipment for Channel 6, the other reason is that the person at the front desk is also our backup person for Channel 6 operations, and that's another reason to bring that person on as full-time and have that person as backup for that purposes. The other thing I want to note about personnel is, as you know, we've had difficulty in recruiting and maintaining an appropriate number of crossing guards, and mid-year that required us to increase their compensation, and so those numbers are also reflected in the budget. I believe we're having some success with that. Budget also includes the actuarially calculated increases to public safety pension contributions. In the police department, police pension would be $572,000, and the fire pension $224,000. Then we've also allocated some funding for removal of blight on private property, about $21,000. I've got TIF study, but actually the feasibility study for the TIF has been completed at St. Joe's Hospital. The $35,000 would be actually to go through the process of establishing a TIF in that area. We'll be meeting with the board of the hospital to present the feasibility study and get their feedback and move forward on that. We're looking at maintenance of our public art at $10,000, which is the same amount we've done for the last 2 years, and also continuing the support of the Rialto and the Historical Museum at 2015 levels, which would be $600,000 for the Rialto and $275,000 for the museum. We're also looking at first phase of improving our city GIS, and this would fund a contractual person at 20 hours a week for $115,000. Also, with the growth and number of permits we've had issued, we do not have a full-time electrical inspector, so I'm proposing $62,000 for part-time, 20-hour-a-week building inspector position on a contractual basis. So I want to share with you, well, I wish it were bigger so that I could see it. But you're probably asking yourself right now, what does a 4.99% property tax increase cost our residents? If you have a $150,000 home, that would be an annual estimated increase of $29.64. At the high end of a $400,000 housing market value, that would be $79.05. So this gives you an idea of the spectrum of what the taxes were paid in 2014 and what the estimated due tax in 15 would be with that kind of increase.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question on that. Jim, I have a question. I can see here you're focusing on the tax levy. What did the tax rate do, the property tax rate?
In terms of how much money somebody has to pay,
Yeah, property tax rate.
this is the calculation. That would be,
No. I'm not talking about what someone's paying
okay,
per house, because we need to know what the EAV did for the
Right.
city of Joliet.
Right.
And that affects the property tax rate.
sure. The rate
you may-
would go from $1.5635 to 1.6234. I can email this to you. I didn't have.
So you're telling me that, you know what the EAV did in the city of Joliet from last year to this year? I'm assuming it increased,
It was 1.9% in Will County and 10% in Kendall County.
as far as the increase?
Yes, the increase.
Okay.
So we're capturing that increased value. We're increasing the rate so that we're collecting 5% more. But then when you interpret that into what a homeowner actually pays, because it's being spread out over a higher EAV throughout the city,
Right.
it's
I get
comes
that.
out to these numbers.
So is it fair to assume, since the EAVs are going up as a result of new property primarily,
Yes,
is it fair to assume that if we kept the rate the same as it was last year, we would still generate some additional tax levy. Do you follow me?
No, I think the tax rate would go down. If
So
you
it may
did,
go down.
it would go down. That, what the average homeowner would be paying, yes.
If what? If we, well, I'm saying if we kept the tax rate the same.
Yes.
Okay.
And we captured new construction,
If you captured just the new construction.
yes,
My hunch is that the tax rate would go down.
Yes.
And you'd still be generating additional revenue.
no,
for
you
the
wouldn't
city.
be generating additional
I
revenue.
need to see that calculation because
Okay.
the math just doesn't work, but
All right,
I'll take a look at that and we'll see. I'm sorry, finish your
not a
presentation.
problem.
Okay.
We'll provide that. Moving on, the proposed budget also includes a reduction in fire department overtime in the amount of $1,748,650. I'm proposing a cost-cutting measure, obviously, shutting down Fire Station Number 3. This area contains the highest number of industrial properties, but also has the least number of residents. And although this will not result in any layoff of firefighting personnel, it'll create more unassigned positions to fill the day-to-day vacancies that can occur from vacations, sick days, and disabilities. So it'll cut down on the overtime budget, down to funding just the overtime for the training. Both the police department and the fire department have proposed studies that'll be conducted regarding the operation and deployment of personnel. So I'm proposing we close Station 3 until we've completed this study, and if there's an alternative recommendation, we review and discuss it at that time. The other thing, the mayor had proposed an inspector general position. I fully endorse the creation of this position in the legal department, and it's part of the proposed budget. Along with the responsibilities of investigating fraud, the position will act as a hearing officer for the city, which will allow our police officers to write more violations under local ordinance, then in turn, hopefully create additional revenues for the city. With this position, I'm also proposing a reorganization of the legal department whereby, like our labor law firm we're using, we contract for all other legal services that can't be provided by corporate counsel and the inspector general positions. We anticipate to have better representation and lower settlements, resulting in a savings. This new position will require an amendment to the municipal code with some additional amendments to be proposed. I believe a city our size should have a professional certified city clerk. After conversation with the mayor, he agrees it's better to have continuity in this position if it were appointed by the city manager. We're now served well by Krista Desiderio, who's a certified municipal clerk, but the question of her continued employment should not rely on the outcome of each mayoral election. We also the budget also continues the funding of the new Munis Tyler program, software program. The other thing is that we had over $45 million in requested capital projects. The only thing that's being requested, and I'll revisit this later in the discussion here, is $3.9 million, and these are projects that have already been committed, including the fiber optic connection between the Union Station and the police department, repair of the roof there, we have $166,000 for roof repair at Fleet Services, and $750,000 for fiber optic on Chicago Street. Again, as I mentioned, we'll revisit capital, but there are no vehicles as in part of this proposed budget. Just first of all, I want to thank Jim Gaddotti and his staff for creating the budget. The budget document that's presented before you has a lot more detail than you've seen in the past and includes the presentation I'm making tonight as well. This is an overview of our general fund revenues, reaching almost $169 million, and the breakdown of where we receive those. As you can see, we rely heavily on sales tax at 27%, followed by property tax at 20%, and then the other sources. Here's a revenue summary showing the various increases that are proposed for 2016. We're seeing since I'm proposing the property tax increase, there's an increase there. Also, a lot of it remains flat. The other taxes include the real estate transfer tax. Moving on. This shows our expenditures by department, police department being first, followed by the fire department, administrative services, finance, and so forth. And again, we will also post this presentation on the website as well, this PowerPoint. As you can see in the general fund, payroll and benefits make up the majority of our expenditures. We're a service organization. We have a lot of employees, and most of our expenditures go towards providing those various services. Again, here's further detail on the outline of the payroll, benefits, professional services, providing numbers attached to those graphs. What's not in there? There's no increases in salaries budgeted, no change in the operation of Bicentennial Park. It's still in there. The federal fire tax is a pass-through that of $181,000 in revenue and expenditure. If you try and compare last year's budget to this year's budget, you're going to have difficulty because as we're implementing the financial software, it's resulting in changes in account numbers in the entire budget. We've also included the organizational chart, the personnel cost summary of every employee and every position count in every department that wasn't included in the prior budgets, providing further detail. This will also help facilitate us towards application, I believe. With next year's budget, we should be able to apply for the GFOA budget award. Moving on to the Water and Sewer Fund, we're including $41.5 million in the system revenues and expenditures of $40.5, or 2.4% decrease from 2015. We've kept the service levels consistent, increased maintenance in an aging system. We've got the new ERP system. We've got almost $20 million for capital improvements, even though 28.7 was requested. And at this point, there's no increase in the water or sewer rates. Water and sewer revenues rely predominantly on our water receipts and just a little bit in fines and fees. And then the expenses are detailed here with the administration and the field operations and water and sewer, customer service, meter repair, and so forth. Water plant and treatment plant operations. Water and sewer fund expenses, payroll and benefits aren't as big of a percentage of expenditure, just as a percentage, because we have debt service of nearly 18%. We transfer out expenditures to the general fund for positions that are funded by both the general fund and water and sewer when they perform those services. And then we also purchase a lot of supplies. Lots of chemicals on tomorrow night's agenda that we purchase annually for water treatment. Overview of the parking fund includes $1.26 million in revenues, a slight reduction. The service levels are consistent with 2015. A slight decrease, 5.6% in the budget. But we're also projecting a deficit of $328,000, and there's no capital improvements budgeted at this point. You can see the revenues that are derived between our parking decks, the parking garage, the fines and fees, and on the street. Our expenditures, our expenses are, collections, meter patrol. We also have, we fund Union Station in this fund at this point in time. At this point, I want to talk a little bit about, before I get into gaming, I'd like to direct you to page 128 of the budget, which is Evergreen Terrace. At this point, we've paid a federal court the judgment amount of $15,077,000 for the purchase of Evergreen Terrace. We've also requested an exception from HUD rules that will allow us to utilize $3.3 million of our CDBG funds that were held back from 2011 to the present towards the purchase of Evergreen Terrace. And I'll review that a little bit more during tomorrow night's council meeting. We've got an agenda item under City Manager's report. We're now in the process of forming the third-party entity with Holston Management Group, along with negotiating an agreement to have them manage the properties. Meanwhile, as we know, the owners have filed an appeal on the decision to allow the city to condemn the property, as well as a decision regarding the value of the property. Once these issues get resolved in the coming months, I recommend that the city bond for all of these expenses to reimburse the general fund immediately, and that income from the property can be used to pay that bond debt. Last year, we adopted a strategic plan, and one of those initiatives was to maintain a 2-month of operating expenses, or 16% of the total general fund, as a balance reserve. Also in 2015, we budgeted $8.7 million of those reserves to create a balanced budget. We finished 2014 with a positive $2.3 million of unspent funds adding back to that reserve. But if we don't bond for the reimbursement of Evergreen Terrace, then tonight I'd be presenting you a budget that would only have a reserve of 13%. Now, I want to focus on gaming a little bit here.
Yes.
Jim, just to touch back on Evergreen, I understand the concept of bonding, but where's the revenue gonna come to pay back those bonds if we are at the mercy of the courts in this appeal process?
What is, I'm sorry, your question?
If we bond out for this 18 million,
Yes.
there needs to be revenue to pay back the bonds.
Yes.
Where do you foresee the revenue coming in to pay back that 18 million if we have no control over the current?
We
property.
would not bond until the appeal process is complete and we own the property. In the meantime, once we establish the third-party entity and the agreement with Holston, we'll be discussing redevelopment of the property. Redevelopment can include vouchering out some of those units, and if you do that, it's going to decrease the income. So
I understand that.
depending upon those decisions, will determine, once we win the case, how much would that bond be for?
So this appeal process, if I recall, this could be a lengthy process. This could possibly not even take place in 2016?
No, we anticipated it'd be 2016, there'd be a decision.
Is there a deadline with this budget if we're not able to bond this out by the end of 2016? What are the ramifications of that?
No, there's not a deadline, per se. It's one of the considerations I'll get to, okay?
Well, I'm a little confused because you're relating the Evergreen issue to the fund balance, that if this doesn't take place, this fund balance for 2016 will only be 13%.
Yes,
So evidently, there's a time frame that we must bond this out to increase that fund balance to the number you want it to be at. So that's why I'm asking, because if I recall correctly, and I'd have to go back to refresh my notes, my memory in the notes, but I thought this appeal process could be a year, could be longer than that. Maybe our attorney could.
That was my understanding, too. I thought it could be up to 2 years as far as the
Correct.
appeal
So I mean, I'm just getting mixed signals
Right.
and information here. So I guess my question is, it sounds like it's a good plan, but if it's not done in 2016, what are the ramifications on the city? Or is there none?
Well, there is none per se outside of not being in compliance with your strategic plan.
Gotcha,
And-
okay.
And 13% versus a minimum 16% is something that we should all be concerned with. And I'll try and tie that all together here. in
Okay,
my
thank you.
conclusion. So when Mayor Odekirk and I got involved with the discussions with the mayors and city managers of Elgin, Aurora, and Des Plaines regarding the adoption of resolutions to request the release of our casino revenues held by the state, what I found out was that none of those other cities include their revenues for anything but capital expenditures. They wait and see what they collect in 2014 before they budget that exact amount in 2015 for specific expenditures. Our problem is that we have been seeing decreasing revenues, as you can see from the numbers in the graphs here. It's continuing a downward trend, and it's never going to be made whole by video gaming. There's the annual argument at the state level whether or not Chicago should be granted a casino license. These other communities faced these trends abruptly and made severe cuts in their services years ago to be able to have that continuity of being able to establish expenditures the following year based on their casino revenues. We've not done that. We rely on our casino revenues for daily operations. So it leaves us with the annual decision of how much do we not fund purchasing basic needs like police cars, ambulances, and plow trucks. When the state finally adopts a budget, it may keep all of the revenues from the casinos and the gaming. And that's something we're going to have to react to, whereas these other communities are not going to have the reactionary crisis decisions that they're going to potentially hit us. Let me point out a couple of positive things in the budget, though. We're proposing $100,000 for replacing the lights on Essington Road with LED bulbs. This will be installed by our city electricians, and the payback and electrical savings should be less than 5 years. We'll obviously leverage these funds for state grants like we did the LED lighting in our parking garages, which we were fortunate to receive. Based on our accuracy of these savings, we'll be proposing an additional similar projects in future years. Tomorrow night, the staff is requesting that you amend the ordinance to reinforce a business-friendly environment here with our engineering fees ordinance from a flat fee of 2.5% of total cost for improvements to a property to a graduated fee for all site plan and subdivision reviews of 2.5% for those projected less than 500,000, 1.75% for 500 to $1 million, 1% for $1 million to $2 million, and 0.25% for those projects above $2 million. We're also proposing funding a special census. We've identified census tracts and census blocks located where there's been new housing since 2010. Based on those estimates, we project an additional 456 units or approximately 1,500 new residents. Based on our state per capita distributions of $140, this would result in annual new revenue of $203,000. So we're proposing the cost, we're estimating the cost between 80 and 100,000, and these new numbers would be in place till the certification of the 2020 census. So our return in a 48 to 52 month period would be $820,000 to $880,000. So I want to conclude a little bit by talking about the fact that our motor fuel tax, our casino gaming, video gaming, and 911 revenue distributions to cities, has been stymied, and we want to thank Representative Manley and Walsh for supporting House Bill 4305, which would release those funds to all cities. Right now, it sits in the Senate. Tomorrow, the governor and the head of the House and Senate are meeting to discuss the budget stalemate, and it's disconcerting that the possibility that the state adopts their budget without giving us the gaming money that they've withheld, possibly reducing the local government distributive fund, or decreasing some of the shared income tax and other revenues that we receive, kind of leaves us in a state of limbo. Since the governor's been in office, he has asked for a property tax freeze on local governments for 2 years. The governor's received over 16 bills from the House and Senate providing exactly that, but he hasn't signed them because it didn't include all of the things that he wants to see in his reform package. I think it's pretty evident that when the state adopts a budget, it's going to include a property tax freeze. And if it happens this year, even if you vote for a property tax increase, it may be frozen, and we may be locked out for the next 2 years. At this point, I'd like to return to my seat and go through the accomplishments and goals of each department and the line item page by page to show some highlights to you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Jim, so if this happens and the governor decides to keep all of our money, where does that leave us? Is this going to be a work in progress, even if we do pass a budget here in the next couple of weeks? And then where does that leave all the other entities that we give money to?
Well, yes, it does leave us in a very precarious situation because you're going to do the things that you believe we need to do as a city to continue to function and provide the high level of public services that our residents have come to expect, yet not knowing what the state is going to do when they adopt their budget could affect us midstream, and it could be as soon as next week or 4 or 5 months from now before we know what the outcome from the state budget's going to have on us.
So we'd have to rework everything
We
again,
would,
right?
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Jim, question. The numbers you presented to us today, does this assume that we get a return on all the money currently being held by the state?
Yes, it does.
Does it also assume no cuts in our LGDF funding from the state?
That's right. Yes.
So I think it's safe to say that some of these things are going to happen. I don't,
They could, very well, yes.
and currently, after the purchase of Evergreen Terrace, how much money do we have in our reserve fund? Maybe Jim Gadadi knows.
Defer to the expert there, Mr. Gadadi.
Good evening, Mayor. The estimate of our fund balance is on page 10 of the document. $23 million.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
$23 million.
So Jim, if, worst case scenario, if the state doesn't give back the gaming money, which is about $8 million now that they're holding, and they take a 50% cut in their LGDF, we have reserved money to keep operations going, but what do we do? What's the emergency plan if that happens?
Well, we'll have to evaluate right away, as soon as we can, what, based on whether or not that's a one-time occurrence. If they don't give us the gaming money they owe us, but start paying us what is owed, if local government distributive fund is 10, 20, 30%, or nothing, there's actually a proposal on the table right now that includes more money through local government distributive fund. Back when the state first increased the income tax, they kept all of that increase that they got. One of the proposals now is that they increase it 1%, but the cities would get their 10% of that 1% increase, which would be more revenue for us. So, not sure what the picture's gonna look like in terms of the outcome. We're working with the Illinois Municipal League and Will County Governmental League to make sure we're lobbying on behalf of our interests. And there'll be minimal impact to cities. But at the same time, we're providing information in terms of what our budget looks like and the types of things that we're not doing, because we're waiting to find out what the state, what the outcome at the state level is going to be.
Right, thank you. I agree. We're all flying blind, and it's through no fault of yours or Mr. Gadadi or the council. I have to say, for the record, I don't believe I would support a real estate tax increase with all those variables and unknowns out there. And again, there's nothing staff could do to solve that problem. We're gonna have to see how this plays out in Springfield. But personally, I would try to stay in a holding pattern for the time being until we have a better picture of where we're at financially. And we're only gonna know when the state passes a budget and some of these issues get resolved. It's just my personal opinion.
Mayor.
Yes.
Jim, what, in my opinion, I don't really see legally how the state can continue to, or not give us those revenues when they have their budget. But say it happens, I mean, I would hope that we just don't roll over and play dead and say, okay, I guess we're not getting the money. I hope we could fight that aggressively, and I don't know what we would do, but I'm sure you have some kind of a plan if that happens. The coalition of cities with their Book-Amy monies and those things like that would do something to try to get the money.
Well, that's true. Will County Governmental League is continually communicating with the mayor and myself in terms of what would be, what's more important to us, this or that, or if they're going to do this, what do we need to see? So it's in a time when my position, though, is that I would hate to see the state increase the income tax, not share it with us at all, and then put a property tax freeze, in essence, handcuffing all of us and all of you as council members, and then them taking the credit for it. Oh, you're not gonna see a property tax increase, even though we've increased your income tax. And that's just passing the pain and the problem onto us to deal with while they balance their budget on our backs. And we're trying to prevent that.
The other thing is, I think that it's essential that we get a copy of your presentation, because, we had a lot thrown at us, and, I'm still thinking about the EAV, or the tax levy, and we're on 2 or 3 departments ahead, talking about potential cuts on those. So, but I think that, what is the deadline for the tax levy? That has to be adopted by a certain time, correct?
I think it's the
The last Tuesday of the month, last Tuesday of
last
December.
Tuesday in December.
Okay. So, I mean, if worse comes to worse, if we could agree on a tax levy, and we don't have the budget ready, we could still do the tax levy, correct? Even into January if we had to? And nobody wants it to go that long, but,
I think we have to have an adopted, I think the code says we have to have an adopted budget, and the tax levy is regulated by state law.
by
So,
December 30th?
yeah, we have to have the budget, but the tax levy has to be submitted to the county by the.
The last Tuesday of December.
You'd have to have a motion on the tax levy that last Monday
And
to
once
turn
it's-
it over on Tuesday.
Once the tax levy is adopted for 2016, can it be changed? Or is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jim, I think are you gonna go through each page you indicated, like page 6?
Well, I was going to go through the various departments.
Maybe we could just And since people are asking questions, go to page 6, if I'm reading this correctly, under expenditures, it looks like just about 2 million, there's gonna be about almost a $2 million increase in expenditures out of the general fund.
Yes.
So I guess where I'm confused here is if we're looking to make these cuts to save money, and we're going to be approving a budget with an increase in expenditures of about 2 million, where are we saving and how are these increases coming in out of the general fund?
Well, as we go through the various departments, we'll point out to you where there's mandated cost increase, such as healthcare, and where we've got the only increases that we're really proposing are those that we're stuck. We have to make those payments for various benefits or.
So to balance this, what you're proposing, so I understand this correctly, is a 4.99% property tax increase.
And an increase in the real
Real
estate
estate.
transfer of $2.
And that's on top of all the cuts that you're proposing.
And a use of 5.3 million out of the fund balance.
If you notice, and I know you said these numbers might not line up, but if you go back, for instance, like in 2014 and 13, I mean, we took some heavy increases in 15. I think we had a little more revenue coming in. How did we, and you weren't here, but looking back, and maybe somebody, I know Ken's here, how were we able to operate at 1.63 million out of the general fund and then bounce up additional 10 million, and then we're up now 12 million? I mean, where are our costs increased that drastic?
Yeah, Councilman, I mean, I haven't looked at this in that much detail in the last several years. So, but my guess is that things like healthcare have gone up substantially, pension costs have increased substantially. We also had, I think there was a 2% raise in there for most of the city at some point in there. So there have been some increases, but I haven't looked at it in enough detail to answer that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. Kind of along the same lines as Councilman McFarland. I want to chat too a little bit about the 4.99% increase in the property tax levy, and I'm going to make it kind of real simple. If our EAV stayed the same, okay? If our EAV stayed the same, and we didn't move, and we didn't adjust our property tax rate at all, okay, we would get, hypothetically, we'd get the same amount of money that we received in the prior year. So where I'm confused at, if you're telling me we've had a 10% increase in Will County, in Joliet, in our EAV, okay?
2% in 1.9 in Will County, 10% in Kendall County.
Okay, so the EAV went up 1.9% in Will County and 10% in Kendall County, so that tells me that it's going up, okay? So if my rate stayed the same as it was last year, I technically should be getting more money. But you're telling me my rate is going up. That's why I'm saying I don't know if the math quite works. Follow me? So if the EAV is going up, which I know that it is, if the EAV is going up because of the new construction and the economy's bouncing back a little bit, but if the EAV is going up and we kept the rate the same, we technically should be getting more money. Now, that's what I need for you to, kind of have your staff take a look at and see exactly where I think, would you say we're getting an extra 1.6 million or 1.1 million or in increased property tax revenues? That may be true, but I guess I'm confused when you say that the rate is going up. And maybe it is, maybe the rate is going up to get that 1.6 million. But if you kind of use my example, if the EAV stays the same and we kept the rate the same, we should get the same amount of levy dollars. But you're telling me the EAV is going up, therefore, I'm assuming that if we just kept that rate the same, we'd be getting more dollars. Now, I don't know how many more dollars, that requires a calculation, but if you could just have one of your staff, Mr. Gadati, take a look at that. I also think with respect to the 5.2 million, and also, not being in accordance with our own ordinance of having 2 months of a fund balance reserve, that's concerning to me. And I think we need to, staff needs to take a look at this budget and see where we plug those gaps. How we make up that 5.2 million and how we make up the additional 3% from 13 to 16. And, I don't know, we may have to go to DEFCON 5 to do it, but I'd at least like to know what we had to do. And, I was a supporter of the Evergreen Terrace, and I still am, but, I know we haven't purchased it yet, technically. I think we need to look at that as well. I mean, that's $15 million out there. And if we can't afford it, where I think when we decided to purchase Evergreen Terrace and move forward on it, we thought full well we can afford it. Now what I'm hearing is that we're falling below our own self-imposed ordinance with respect to maintaining a fund balance. Not saying this council or myself would do anything different, but I at least think we need to know what our options are.
Okay. If I can direct your attention to the Administrative Services Department,
Mayor?
starting at,
Yes. Before we move on to the kudos portion, I really want to stay focused on the budget. I can tell you right now, you won't get my support for a 4.99% increase in the property tax. We've got too much money on the table. With all due respect, somebody up here said that we'd have a problem with many different finances, including the fund balance, if we went through with the purchase of Evergreen. We did it, so here we are. We've got nearly $400,000 in the CDBG that's going to now be used for Evergreen, Jim, you said, right? That's money that some portion of which served purposes that we're now going to have to roll into our general fund or already is hidden in the general fund. It may not be the full 400,000. I didn't see any decrease in our discretionary spending between the Historical Museum and the Rialto. We're closing a fire station according to their proposal, and we're making some other cuts, and we still have no guarantees. We have to look at those 600,000 plus 250,000. Is that right? I'm sorry?
275.
275.
We're at almost $1 million, just on those two options. You're looking at raising property taxes to try to capture, or in other words, tax the homeowners, an extra 1.6 million. There's $1 million still there in discretionary spending. I don't know why we're bolstering other budgets when we have a budget crisis or problem of our own. So you really do need to go back and sharpen your pencil. I haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing yet. I just saw it tonight, like everyone else in the council, when we got up here. But there's too much money on the table. There's too much spending of non-essential. That's it, Mayor.
Directing your attention to page 17 of the budget. The Administrative Services Department. What I asked each department was to give me some of the accomplishments and goals for next year. So as we go through these accomplishments and goals, we'll also point out to you some significant changes in their line item within their department budget as well. So the Administrative Services Department, as you know, oversees fleet maintenance, HR. We've got the new ADP system for HR, and we're tracking the workers' compensation and reporting. They're in charge of and completed all of the painting of City Hall and the maintenance around the buildings, and reduce the fleet maintenance inventories. For 2016, the goal is to select a vendor for a vehicle maintenance tracking system, begin implementation with completion in 2017. Also engage a consultant to evaluate all of our buildings, provide an ongoing plan for depreciation and maintenance. Also a third-party consultant for city staffing salary levels. As you know, the collective bargaining agreements are up this year with 6 unions, and that'll be a big part of their duties. So, referring to, again, page 17, as you can see in all of the departments, I'll reference administrative services first. Page 16 gives you the organizational structure. Page 17 is broken down by activities. You see at the top, the Board of Fire and Police, Buildings and Grounds, Fleet Services, and Human Resources. On page 18, it's broken down further by those various areas, with the totals being on page 17. And then at the bottom of 19, it gives you the personnel worksheet showing you the number of employees that were budgeted or actual in 14, budgeted in 15, requested in 16, and then my recommendation. So, and page 20 also contains the breakdown of human resources as well. Page 21 gives you a by position in that department, the pay, the overtime, holiday, stipends, cost of retirement, insurances, healthcare, FICA, so that you have a grand total. You've got a total salary cost, you've got a total benefit cost, and then a total employee cost for each position. Obviously, we want to give you this overview this evening, and I'll ask you if there are any questions from what you see, but logically, you're just getting this right now, and we'll take some time to digest it and have questions for us in the future as well. Moving on to community development. They completed the downtown development plan, worked on the, to assist the committee to establish priorities within that plan. The Des Plaines River Valley Enterprise Zone was approved by the state. We've talked with the new owners of the ONS site about a mixed-use development of 253 acres. Completed the TIF evaluation study at St. Joe's Hospital, and negotiated incentives with Cadence, IKEA, and also bringing in Cadence, IKEA, Amazon, Saddle Creek, Mars, and Hillwood, all locating their fulfillment and manufacturing facilities and warehousing here in the city of Joliet. And we'll get for you the true numbers in terms of what we believe the actual square footage and estimated jobs that are associated with this, because I think this is a tremendous accomplishment this year. It's been teed up for a number of years, but it's really starting to happen for the city of Joliet, and is something that we need to brag about. For 2016, we'll be presenting that redevelopment option to St. Joe Hospital Board and see if they want to proceed with the establishment of that TIF district. Also, continue our dialogue with the Cullinan people. We're meeting with state and federal officials on access issues to the property, and talking about other options in terms of development. We're also looking at the implementation of the downtown plan with goals and timetables, and taking a look at the various business district needs and determine a plan of action there as well.
Jim, if I can?
Yes.
Like you said, we're seeing this for the first time, but off the top
Sure.
of my head, would you consider a 2016 goal to be, to correlate with the business that is coming into Joliet, a real undertaking by this city to ensure that as many city employees are hired at these companies as possible, And also, I believe you were with me, there was a presentation in my office a few weeks back from the Realtors Association about the city partnering up with local realtors to basically do house fairs at these companies, that people who are working in Joliet from other municipalities be shown the stock of housing here in Joliet, encourage them to move into our city also, kind of hitch our wagon to what's happening with all the new jobs coming into the south.
Sure, we can add those. As I mentioned earlier, 21,000 was added in this budget for contractual services for removing blight, for example, dead trees and debris and excessive weeds on private property or where there are empty structures. And we've got 35,000 for that TIF study or the TIF implementation, and 50,000 for professional services for city property data to go along with that. Also 115,000 for the GIS services. This is where we also have the $10,000 for the maintenance of the city's public art, and added the 62,000 for the electrical inspectors as well. In the city clerk's office, a few pages further, we've created a new resident welcome packet. All of the committees and commissions are integrated into Granicus and Stream Live when possible, and automated the minutes. Standard operating procedure for information services on the renewal of the business licenses. We've got emergency manuals and inclement weather preparedness for information services and in the various departments. They formed a safety committee to evaluate the building security and implemented proposed improvements in that area. Also, all of the FOIAs for police department went directly to them because there's a lot of review that takes time, and they've got the expertise to do so. Next year, we're looking to establish and streamline our business service license and special events process to coordinate for faster service. We're looking to create business card flash drives with a video for our new residents so that we can give them that new packet that we've established. And we're going to work with that Realtor group, Mayor, and potentially co-host a breakfast with them to help the realtors market the city and give them a number of these business cards with that information that they can pass on to potential residents here in the city. We've engaged the information desk to review and improve the city's website, and working with Tyler and Baycor, who's assisting us, allowing businesses to pay monthly sales tax online. Also, reviewing our records disposal process. Moving on, and this was created really out of the office of the city manager, with Mr. Jones' position, focusing on economic development. This year, he put together the RFQ and RFP process for the city-owned properties on 1 East Cass Street, better known as Crabigales. We've had 2 developers make proposals, and we've got, I think next week, a committee that'll review those proposals and make a recommendation to the city council. We've initiated legislative and state agency dialogue, again, to facilitate the funding of our multimodal project. And also, Mr. Jones has been working on the parking improvement program. Next year, he'll be in charge of this, I'm sorry.
Just to go back to that slide, I noticed the position that you've put in here for the Economic Development Director is reporting directly to you with no oversight over the department that you're talking about in terms of economic development. What's the rationale behind that?
Well, the position's twofold. It's Deputy City Manager, Economic Development Director. Steve would work in my office on general programs as well as the focus being economic development, working with planning, the team. We have a development team that we have, which includes engineering, planning, community development, building, and they get together every month, and we invite those that have proposals to review their ideas, their concepts, and help them move through the approval process and expedite that for them. So he'll be working with community economic development closely as well.
So who's gonna be the go-to? I think this is something that we've been talking as a council for quite a few years now. So I'm elated to see the position in here. I think we're moving the right step in the right direction. I just wanna make sure that we as a city are basically giving direction to those that are seeking to move here or to stay here, and for economic incentives, our sustainability, like we're going to be discussing tomorrow night on the hospitality guru, who to come to. I think that's the issue. So I'm a little concerned that we're having this economic development person not overseeing community development. It sounds like you guys are gonna meet once a week and decipher who comes through. We need a point person. We need somebody that has the tools in their pocket to know when somebody calls, what it is exactly we are able to offer, what is the right steps and direction to apply for incentives, what is zoned accurately for what it is you're trying to put together. So I think that's my concern a little bit, is with this position reporting directly to you with no oversight to what's currently looking over economic development and community development, there's no connection there.
Well, they'd be working hand in hand. However, this position would be that go-to person, would take the lead. When the mayor or I get a phone call from a potential developer that says they're interested in a particular piece of property or want to come in and sit down with us and talk about potential development, the person in this position, Mr. Jones, would be the go-to person to coordinate all of that.
Gotcha, thank you.
Sure. So we'd be undertaking the special census, also undertaking the, following up on the Crabigales to make sure that once that is awarded, that the development follows through. There'd be a internal analysis in terms of the structure and function of our economic development needs, and a market study to determine the retail prospects and the demographic characteristics of Joliet. Also, we do an analysis and reconfiguration of the downtown SSA, which expires in August of 2016, and potentially an extension of that downtown TIF district. Also, there'd be marketing material put together for business attraction activities. Also, he would attend the National and Regional International Council of Shopping Centers to market Joliet to the retail land development.
Jim?
Yes.
If I, again, could ask if you can add as a goal for us to secure the funding and for construction to begin for the Holbrook Road Bridge next year.
Will do. In the finance department, we implemented the ADP payroll system. Munis Tyler Accounting hired a new utility billing manager and an accountant, refinanced the 2005 GO bonds, started the process for collection of the delinquent sanitary districts, and the budget process for information improvements, and also in the customer service division, expanded the duties to process the real estate transfer stamps, and took that over from the city clerk's office.
Mayor,
Yes.
Jim, question, we're kind of going backwards for a second.
Sure.
The new Inspector General is going to be financed, if you will, through the elimination of 2 staff jobs, where the savings would be from contracting out what Marty can't do. How are we paying for the economic development position? Did you explain that and I missed it? Can you give us a little detail?
Certainly. I'm proposing a $75,000 reduction to the Will County CED, and then also utilizing $75,000 from the downtown SSA. Now, there's some details on how that will work to minimize the impact. Plus, as I just explained, if we expand the downtown SSA, they would increase their revenues the following year. I think much more than the $75,000 is being proposed to be used for this position. And Steve would also be doing economic development in the downtown.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jim, I'm sorry.
Certainly.
What did we give to or contribute to CED last year? Was it $1.50? Was it?
It's $125,000 is the
$125,000.
annual contribution.
thank you.
Yes. Going back to the finance department goals, they've got the utilities module for Munis Tyler, applying for the GFOA Distinguished Budget Award for 2017, and also expanding credit card collection at the police department, along with expanding the transparency of our financial data on the website. Fire department. Which starts on page 49. As you know, we purchased the community notification system, and that is in implementation right now. And this requires, we were able to transfer information from Nixle over to Everbridge, or they're just calling it the Smart Message Community Notification System at this time. We'll be doing more recruiting for that system to get people to sign up for notifications. We increased the insured ambulance fees and decreased the cost 1%. And we provided the video laryngoscopes in service to all of the ambulances, and that was purchased by the foreign fire tax. We've got all of our hydrant testing apps on the iPad to update our hydrants right in the field, and the water department has live access to that information so they can prioritize the repairs. And then the emergency management also conducted a tabletop drill with the emergency operations center staff for a radiological emergency and also a train derailment. Goals for 2016 include instituting a career orientation program for young people in the high school level. And that would be to assist in recruiting new hires within our community, and also get those in the minority community more interested in careers in the fire department. Also assisting the Police and Fire Board to revise the requirements for new hired firefighters to, again, better reflect the community. We're looking at a standard of covered department study, which I mentioned earlier to you. And then continuing developing exercises for all of the potential hazards for operations in the city. Legal department accomplishments include changes in the public speaking rules during the council meetings, finalizing the handbook for mayor and city council, the draft ordinance regarding temporary signs, banners, feathered signs, streamlining the procedure for responses for attorney general inquiries, working with the police department, city staff to draft overweight truck ordinance, which is on the agenda tomorrow night, and working with the Fire District Council to resolve annexation fee payment issues. Along with the Finance Department, Marty's working with Jim Gadati on bringing the sanitary district payment issue forward to get that resolved. We've also got, they're working with city staff to resolve the Arbiter Road installation problem. And then Marty's been working on the waste management permitting of the transfer station and landfills out on Laraway Road. For 2016, the goal is to recodify our ordinances. Actually, that may be the following year, because there's a lot of ordinances that we're finding need to be updated. So the first primary goal is to update our ordinances to get ready for that recodification. Finalize the business service licensing and fee structure, streamlining a special events application, and working with Joliet Township regarding an intergovernmental agreement for animal control services, and then also revising that ordinance as well.
Jim, if I may. Regarding the last point, revised animal control ordinance, it would appear that if we considered maybe a part-time position for some type of ordinance, animal ordinance compliance officer, we could actually make money for the city. It's something the police department doesn't do very well, and I don't think they're very interested in doing it. We know that township animal control doesn't enforce our ordinances. I think that's a position that would pay for itself in spades, and, you know, better living conditions for many of our residents.
It's something we'll certainly explore. Information technology. We've got the financial software installed for Tyler Munis. Bid management is now up on our website. We've got a master fiber plan and strategy developed, document management system upgrade, and web content management upgrade as well. And then transportation center, working on the safety and security system, and that will include the fiber optics connecting the police department with Union Station. The 2016, they'll be completing the Tyler Munis implementation, beginning the security policy enforcement, and also doing an annual external security assessment program for our IT, and also backup and disaster recovery methodology. And we're looking at a dig once ordinance, and that's where utility companies, ComEd or NICOR, come in, and they have to, before we issue a permit, they have to offer us the capability to decide whether or not we want to lay fiber in the same hole that they're digging, because that drastically reduces the cost of installation for us. Then looking to expand their support services to the various departments. In the police department, the command staff was restructured. This resulted in improved community engagement through increased visibility. There's been a lot more involvement and engagement through the social media and the web presence. And from an operational side, it's expanded the quality of each division within the department, having a deputy chief overseeing those various areas. They expanded the NOPT unit, again, improving community engagement, facilitating stronger relationships with residents in our neighborhoods. From an operational side, additional officers have been added to the far west side neighborhoods and western business districts to increase accountability to underserved areas. We've also expanded the 2nd and Richards to 2 officers to improve the safety and elevated presence in high crime areas. This also includes adding 2 officers to a central district. We also restored the training sergeant position, which continued efforts to recruit and manage the strategic plan and improve the operations to ensure compliance with Illinois state law, training standards, and board mandates. These are increasingly a burden on the department, and it's very much appreciated that this position was approved last year. For next year, they're looking to implement or rather conduct this resource allocation study and increase their operational efficiency, reduce violent crime through improved technology and shared data, and also improve community relationships with diverse groups using the social media and consulting assistance. Short-term goal will be to bring forward the requirements of the new Police and Community Relation Improvements Act, and this is a requirement that goes into effect January 1st, where all officers are going to have to complete a pedestrian stop card data sheet, and they're working on electronic method of this data collection because they've got to actually distribute a copy of that to each person that they're pulling over and interacting with. And this is something that they're working on right now. This also includes new protocols for independent investigation of all officer-involved incidents involving deadly force.
Jim,
Yes.
if you could consider adding a goal here. I know in your accomplishments, you mentioned the 2 Central District beat officers at
Yes.
downtown. But of course, they have been taken away now. Those are temporary positions. I would like to see us establish those as full-time positions and maybe look at the downtown SSA to help fund those positions.
Okay. In Public Works, we converted both garages in the downtown to LED. We got 65% grant funding, which is what we'd also be applying for in the Essington Road situation. They had over 1.4 million residential street reconstruction projects, resurfaced 20 miles of roadway, removed over 2,700 parkway trees that were dead, and planted 900 new parkway trees. This is a program that will be continuing in future years, working with that with the nursery and the funding that you approved, the multi-year funding. They also completed the waterproofing repairs to the Silver Cross field, coordinated that. As you know, we purchased and began operation of the brine machine for snow clearing operations. So next year, we'll be doing Phase 1 engineering for the reopening of Chicago Street between Jefferson and Washington, converting 150,000 of the high-pressure sodium lights to LED, as I mentioned. But this would be also on major street lighting on Collins Street between Jefferson and Woodruff. Also, they complete a biannual roadway resurfacing, the surface condition and inspection of all city streets. And then the reconstruction of Caton Farm Road Bridge over the DuPage River is also planned. Completion of the intersection traffic signal improvements at Caton Farm Road and Essington Roads, and we're kind of dependent on the acquisition of right-of-way for that project. Public utilities, we recently purchased the computerized maintenance management software. Water and sanitary sewer system was mapped in GIS, and they rehabbed 4.2 miles of water main. In the water division, we returned to pre-2008 field operation staffing level by adding another crew to be out there for water main repairs, and also added some equipment to support those 3 water crews. They also completed the water and sewer rate study. Next year, they'll be focusing on data entry for this utility asset program, updating the mapping and the storm and sewer assets, and again, adding some more equipment for the 3 water crews. At the request of council, the RFP is already out for an efficiency study on the operations before any water and sewer rate increase would be considered. So that's moving forward and will be complete hopefully by August. And then there's a capital improvement program with the Illinois State Revolving Fund to establish and maintain our cash reserves.
Mayor,
Yes.
did you say August?
It could be as late as
You're
August.
talking about the completion
Yes.
of the, not just the RFP being.
No, the RFP is out right now.
Okay.
So it'll come forward to you very soon,
Thank you.
certainly. So now I'm returning back to capital requests. And if you can turn to page 136 in the back of the budget. And this is just to point out to you the various needs as perceived by all of the departments for various pieces of equipment. We're still going to continue to address urgent needs, urgent issues. Tomorrow night, as you know, on the agenda is the purchase of water tanks so that we can have additional trucks out there spreading the brine on the streets to melt the ice before the snowfall. So that's on the agenda, but I just wanted to show you a few photos. This is a service vehicle in the fire department, and this is the view underneath that door. It's completely rusted out and goes all the way up there. I think this vehicle has 198,000 miles on it. Police cars are rusting away. It's not just the fact that the equipment's starting to fail, but it's also an image of the community, and this is something that I think we should be concerned about as a city. Fenders rusting out, paint chipping on the hood there to the right. Here's the rusted out truck, the floorboard. This was covered by carpet, and the carpet caught on fire from the exhaust. So the driver had to stop and get out and put out the smoking carpet, and this is what was found underneath. So as you can see, these vehicles are in service right now, but we do have a dire need for replacing a lot of the vehicles. Now, something like rust, and you know, we can address those, but these vehicles get rusty because they're old. They've got a lot of miles. Our kudos to the fleet maintenance workers who spend their days maintaining these vehicles so that our employees can get out there, but we're right now, there's over 2 vehicles a month, 2 police cars a month that are in essence being redlined and saying that they're unusable. We've got 2 aerial trucks that the electricians are using, one from 1988, the other 1989, that in the next year or so, we aren't sure the state will even certify them to be able to use for aerial vehicles anymore. So I'm pointing out to you that we do have a dire need, that there's nothing funded at this point except those things that we were obligated to continue funding from last year. And so again, we're kind of in a state of wait here to see what comes of the state budget. But I again want to thank Jim Gadotti and his staff for putting together this document. assisting me in this budget preparation.
Mayor.
Yes.
Jim, just to piggyback a little bit on your final conclusion of the report with the vehicles, you mentioned a while back that you were going to look into a leasing possibility for the city with vehicles. Have you or your staff had the opportunity to look into that?
Well, when you're leasing vehicles, you're entering multi-year agreements, and so then you're truly committed. So, if we were in the middle of a lease, you'd see on those last 2 pages, dollars there, and we'd be cutting personnel other places in the budget.
Have we as a city looked to see what it would save us in terms of maintenance and long-term costs if we were to move to a leasing system? I believe at one time in your conversation, I don't know if you're looking at the police department, but other municipalities that lease their vehicles. The same thing with some of their equipment. And instead of buying backhoes and dump trucks, a leasing, have we at least looked at that, investigated to see what the cost is instead of a upfront out-of-pocket cost?
I don't know that we have. That's something we can take a look at, certainly.
That way, when the life of the vehicle is no longer there, we could either sell it out or return it. Just a suggestion.
Any other comments, questions?
Mayor, the staff serves at your pleasure. If you'd like to set another date for a meeting to discuss this further before the next council meeting in 2 weeks, I'm more than happy to schedule that for you.
Yeah, I'll open the floor. I think we should come back next week, though. We got a meeting tomorrow night, but we're not gonna discuss this tomorrow. So I
Right.
think next Monday or Tuesday. I
And
agree.
I think staff has some homework to do as
Sure.
well, so, next Monday.
Yeah, Jan.
Same time next Monday?
5:30?
Next Monday,
Okay,
5:30?
good.
Perfect.
That'd be the 7th, I think, December 7th.
Yes.
Jim, one other item. I know this is really small potatoes compared to some of the things we talked about, but promises were made. Is there anything in the budget about the city entrances, funding to light the flags properly that we display every night?
No, there isn't. You can see that. We took a look at it. It is included, I think, on page 137 in that list.
Okay.
Some cost estimates were associated with the various intersections that were proposed. Look under the fire department on 136. It is in there as a request.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, Jim, on that same note, and I did see it in some of the areas, was that to run electric, or did they also look at solar?
We've spent the last year exploring the solar and buying different things. And after, 4 or 5 months, they've failed. It's just, they're not very durable. They're made for, the front yard flagpole that you have at your residence. They're really not made for something of the caliber that we have.
Are we looking at? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
If council wishes, I do have a request for a brief closed session.
We need to have public comments first.
Sure.
So if anybody needed to address the council and has any public comments, now would be the time.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Wayne Horn, Joliet. Regarding the flag, I think that it would be appropriate if you take down the flags because they cannot be illuminated 24 hours a day. Having made this request many times and received a commitment from several of you, I appreciate it. I think until that's done, I think that has to be looked at again. I know we didn't fly them for several years because of that. It's not any different now. I think we should respect that. And as far as the budget is concerned, I think it is, all due respect, we're desperate again to get this done without all of the information that we need. I appreciate that that fact is not is not available, the information is not, we don't know any more or less now than we knew 2-3 weeks ago. So why did we wait so long? We always seem so desperate to get this done. It's just a question, comment, no reaction necessary. I think we all understand.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Carol Mulvihill from Joliet. I'm not a mathematician, and I didn't write down what the total budget was, so I don't know what it was. But I'm thinking that Joliet's the fourth largest city of Illinois, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Of that total budget, if I add up those three arts, I get 885,000. So I'm thinking of the total budget, how much is that goes out of the city for supporting the arts? And my second point is, of those three arts, do they bring in 885,000 a year to the city in revenue? That's it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to go into a closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, right, acquisition, or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded.
Yes.
Councilman Hug?
Aye?
Councilman McFarland?
Aye?
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilman Pullman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Motion carried.